Guys, I do not say this lightly. We have been given a new modern horror classic. Today I am talking about Raka Raka's new film, Bring Her Back, from the directors of Talk to Me. Now, Talk to Me, I really liked. I thought for what I was going for, like a well-made kind of like teenage horror movie about possession that also doubled as a good allegory for like drinking culture. I thought it was excellent, well-made, funny, really visceral editing, and incredible, like punch in your gut sound design. That was the big thing that stood out to me. But in saying that, even though as much as I like Talk to Me, it's not a film that kind of like invaded my subconscious the way something like Hereditary or Midsommar did. But this movie here, Bring Her Back, I finished last night. I was at an early screening and I turned to my friends and I said, oh my God, I think we have the next Hereditary. I think we have the next like real sort of modern horror classic that I think, in my opinion, is rather undebatable. I think you are going to be hard pressed to find people that actually think this movie does not live up to the hype and does not deserve the reputation I think it is inevitably going to be given. So we're going to do a spoiler-free review and then a spoiler-filled discussion. I went into this movie knowing virtually nothing, and I think that's how you guys should go into it too. So I'm going to give you my positives, give you any weaknesses. There aren't really any, to be honest, but I'm going to give you my positives, give you my highlights, give a very vague plot setup, and then I'm going to get into a spoiler-filled discussion for those of you who have seen it. We're not going to give any big things away in the spoiler-free section. Do not worry. So, spoiler-free setup is two orphans who have lost both their parents, looking for a new place to stay, and they get paired up with a mum who may not be quite what she seems. The mum is played by Sally Hawkins. She is incredible here, all right? And instantly from the moment you meet her, something is not quite right. Occasionally she has these moments of warmth, but she's also very, very kind of like calculating and like kind of steps over boundaries. It's really good, uncomfortable social dynamic, social horror for a good chunk of this movie. Is really just been like, what's this woman about? What's she up to? Watching these people that have recently lost their father, lost their only parental figure, move into this house and kind of be micromanaged by this woman. You're sitting there just on edge. You know, she, on one end, it just feels like an exaggerated, overbearing mother, but on the other hand, it just feels like something isn't quite right. On top of that, she's lost a child herself in her past. And so you're instantly sort of sitting there being like, is she trying to replace the kind of wound of that with these kids? On top of that, she also has another foster child there who's been in all the marketing material, all the trailers, who is weird. He's off-putting and weird and strange, and something is not right. So at the moment these kids show up to this house, you just know something's off. You're waiting for the shoe to drop. And I think the way this movie, in a short runtime too, in 90 minutes, builds up the tension for so much of this movie, it's working as just kind of a really grim, dark, sad, like family drama. There's these occasional real black comic moments, but for a while in this movie, it actually holds off on the scares, holds off on the revelations of what's really happening here, what's the mum really up to, and just really leans into the discomfort of being in a new home, the discomfort of having to call someone you don't know mom, you know, having to deal with the loss of a parent while having to people please this woman you don't really like that's stepped into your maternal role. It's incredibly well done. The social dynamics here, the uncomfortable tension between the two kids and Sally Hawkins is just incredible. And we need to talk about Sally Hawkins. So she's coming off the back of two generational performances of a sweet mum in Paddington 1 and Paddington 2. And here she is the complete opposite. She is off-putting and strange in a way that you can't really put your finger on. There are so many interactions early on in the movie that I won't spoil, don't worry, we'll talk about in the spoiler section, but so many interactions early on where you're like, she sort of said the right thing, or maybe there's a charitable lens, but it just doesn't land right. It's an incredible powerhouse performance. And on top of that, the two main children that we're following, the character of Andy and the character of Piper, are both excellently well performed. These are people I've never seen in anything else before. I believe the actress that plays Piper, the vision impaired girl, is fantastic. And this was apparently her first role. I was watching an interview where they talked about the fact that she'd never acted before and she crushed it. And I completely agree. All the performances here are unreal, but Sally Hawkins And in my opinion, the strange child that she has adopted that is also there on the premises is steal the movie. They are absolutely phenomenal. On top of that, this is a horror movie where geography is incredibly important. The one big compliment I really want to give, in Talk to Me, it was actually the sound design. I thought the sound design was incredible. In this movie, it's a lot less kind of teenage horror movie vibe. It's not going for the kind of like over the top crunchy sound design that Talk to Me was. The sound design here is solid and gets the point across, but this is a more nuanced, tragic, grim kind of movie, you know? Like it's a lot more interested in like exploring grief and exploring like the idea of not feeling at home with people that are around you. It's a lot more of a somber tone. So the sound design is dialed down a little. But one thing I really want to praise about this movie that I've missed in a lot of modern movies because they're all shot on green screen is the sense of geography. And it doesn't sound like that big of a deal. Most of this movie takes place in the adoptive mother's house, in Sally Hawkins's house, all right? And so much of the movie, you're sitting there and you know exactly where everyone is. A lot of emphasis is placed on the pool, as well as a chicken coop, as well as an outdoor shed, as well as the two siblings' bedrooms and where they land compared to where the mother is located. And so much tension and just like sense of geography is created in a really effective way that I found I was really kind of like, okay, this person's over here, which means they have to be over there. And like, oh my God, if they don't get to here in time, this person's going to arrive in this room. And like, it was just really, really satisfying. And I see in an interview, they've talked about how they actually like stripped away the fences around the pool. And this sense of geography was really important. And I think they nailed it. I think it really escalates the tension when you know where everyone is in relation to one another. And when things kind of transpire and escalate and all these characters are butting heads and things are taking off in a really dark direction, knowing where everyone is in relation to one another really helps dial and escalate that tension. But overall, to finish my spoiler-free thoughts, this is a must-see movie, in my opinion. This is my favorite movie of the year so far. I was ahead of the game with The Substance, and I really want to be ahead of the game here, but I think this is a fantastic movie that you need to go out and see. It is dark. It is not as much fun as Talk to Me, and I truthfully prefer that. This is a movie that will invade my subconscious. I have questions about it. It doesn't spell things out or hold your hand. It feels like there's a deep lore and mythos around what is explored ultimately here, what the kind of revelations are. But on top of that, I think even just the way it kind of looks at and subverts the found family trope and kind of leans into this exploration of grief and what it turns people into is just phenomenal. I think the boys absolutely nailed it. I think they did such a fantastic job. And I'm not even saying this because I'm like normal. A lot of Australian movies kind of suck, but these guys are on something else. All right. I haven't seen more promising debuts than Ari Aster's double header of Hereditary and Midsommar. You know, Talk to Me and Bring Her Back. This is just phenomenal filmmaking. And it's interesting because I'm not sitting here with Bring Her Back being like, oh, I really miss the sound design or I really miss the hyper montage editing. This is going for something completely different. It's going for something a lot more somber and darker and broodier and demented. And the pacing is a lot slower and thicker, and it makes you sit in these moments. I've seen Letterboxd reviews saying that they wish moments sat for longer. I completely disagree. I think this movie used its horror sparingly, and when you get it, it's horrific, but it really makes you sit in the character drama and this uncomfortable tension of can we trust this mum or not. It's excellent stuff. Now we are going to get into a full spoiler talk so I can really get into the themes, the things that jumped out to me, the things I like. Let's just go for it. So first off, the big revelation here is, for those of you who aren't going to see the movie, the big revelation here, the long and short of it, Laura, the adoptive mother played by Sally Hawkins, is essentially trying to pull off this insane ritual with that weird adoptive child that's been in all the marketing material. His name is Ollie/Connor, but we'll call him Ollie for now. So she is using Ollie through like these demented like spells, possessions, cult-like stuff she's come across. She is using him as a conduit, right? And she has awakened what seems like a demon. They say it's an angel, but it looks like a demon to me. But basically this demon has entered this child that she has adopted, right? Ollie. And Ollie needs to do this spell where he essentially eats her initial child's dead body. So the child she lost to drowning, right? Her initial daughter, she still has the body of. And her adoptive child, the weird one in all the marketing material, Ollie, needs to chomp on this body, right? And then keep it in his stomach. And then she is going to murder her new adoptive daughter, Piper, one of the main characters, right? The one that's vision impaired. She's going to drown her in the pool the same way that her initial daughter died. I know it's hard if you haven't seen the movie. And then Ollie, the one from all the marketing material, is going to regurgitate the corpse he's consumed to put the soul into the body of this new girl that she's drowned, essentially. So she's essentially doing a consciousness swap. She's taking her daughter's spirit from the body, right? Because she believes that spirits hang around in dead bodies long after the body has given out. And the conduit, Ollie, from the marketing material, is going to gobble, 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 and then spit the soul into the new dead body of this girl that she's adopted, Piper, right? The vision impaired girl. And Andy catches wind of this and goes against her and tries to stop that. So let's get into things that jumped out at me on the way to that insane ending. First off, I love that when we first meet Laura, we find out that she has a taxidermy dog. It speaks to the fact that she really struggles with the idea of death, with the idea of letting things go. And it's a nice payoff that we find out she also is essentially taxiderming her own daughter, the one she initially lost. But I just love this initial detail. It's a moment that you look back on and you're like, that was weird. I was right for thinking that was weird as fuck. And it speaks to something bigger, her big complex around death. Next, there's this moment. So the siblings have this system, right? So the older brother, Andy, has this sibling where he says grapefruit to Piper, his younger half sister, right? He'll say to her grapefruit, and that basically means he's not lying to her or deceiving her or shielding her feelings with what he's describing visually to her. She's vision impaired. She can only make out shapes. So he'll explain things to her and go, oh, grapefruit, like I am telling the truth. And there's this interesting moment at the start where he says to her that Ollie, who is weird as fuck, all right? Like Ollie shows up and he's looking demented and has like, the 1,000-yard stare and is just looking through their souls and is basically salivating, looking forward to eating Piper. And it's intentionally off-putting. It's framed as horrific. And Andy sits there and goes, yeah, he looks like a nice young boy. And kind of not necessarily the joke, but we know he's telling kind of a white lie there to ease Piper's discomfort and also not seem rude to the mother. And you get this really interesting moment where then Laura, Sally Hawkins' character, then also seemingly lies and says, yeah, he's got long red curly hair. Now, this moment is interesting because it plays a few different ways. On one end, it feels like she's trying to almost bond with Andy and be like, oh, if we're both telling lies, like I'll add one too. So it almost feels like she's acknowledging the absurdity of describing Ollie as pleasant when he's clearly off-putting. But at the same time, it might not be that at all. It also feels like she's just lying to deceive Piper, just to rub it in almost. Like it could almost be perceived as a bit of an insult towards Andy. He takes it as that. He finds it really disconcerting and uncomfortable. So you can either find at this moment where she's trying to bond with Andy, but it's like bonding through cruelty by seemingly wanting to tell an unnecessary lie to Piper, but it almost is like, is she calling out Andy because he does clearly find Ollie off-putting and is telling a white lie? There's so many ways you can slice this scene. Most likely it is just meant to be sinister and she's not trying to bond with Andy at all because that's a weird way to bond with him and she's trying to fuck with him. But there's so many different ways you can read it, and I think it speaks to this movie's ability to like kind of explore these icky, uncomfortable social dynamics. From there's this great scene very early on. This is what I'm saying. Like a lot of the movie is interested in just uncomfortable social situations. She starts prying about his phone. He's texting away being like, oh, there's this weird kid there. The family's strange. I don't really like it here in this new foster home or with this new foster parent. And she starts being like, oh, who are you texting? Girlfriend? And he's like, no. And she's like, boyfriend? And he's like, no. And she's like, so who are you texting? He's like, just a friend. He gets very guarded. She then accuses him of being defensive, but it's like she was being incredibly like invasive. And then he gets up at one point to do something and she like snatches his phone and starts trying to read it. And he freaks out, in my opinion, rightfully so. And this starts a consistent trend throughout this movie where she'll essentially bait him into having a very angry, I'm not even going to call it like an angry reaction. To me, a pretty valid reaction given how she's behaving, but she'll consistently push his buttons and provoke him to kind of lose his shit, and then play the wounded party and be like, oh my God, I'm just a frail old woman. How could you do this to me? It is skin crawlingly frustrating to watch. You know, if you've ever met people like this that kind of like bait you and then play the victim, it was low key triggering. It was low key triggering. It was tough to watch, and they do it throughout the movie. So if you are still watching this for some reason and haven't seen the movie, like be warned, it's a lot. But from there, it gets worse because we start seeing that Andy is wetting the bed. And we assume this is like a normal trauma response because he's recently lost his father, right? The father died in the shower. And we think maybe it's a bit of a trauma response. But no, we actually find out the mum at a certain point, it is revealed to us that she's like peeing in a measuring cup and then pouring it on him just to fuck with him. Essentially, just like as like awful psychological torture to make him go in the shower or something. Like it's I assume it's to try get him to go in the shower and be triggered, but if not, it's just cruel fucking with him for no reason other than wanting him out of the house and seemingly trying to make him snap, trying to make him become violent, trying to get him out of the house so she can have Piper all to herself for this insane ritual she wants to do. From there, we have this incredible sequence. This is where I started getting Hereditary vibes, where they go to the father's funeral. We find out that, yeah, he can't shower. And then she kisses the dad, Sally Hawkins, all right? Laura kisses the dad's corpse and then gets Andy to do so as well. And then we have this incredible interaction where the younger daughter, Piper, right, or the younger sister, sorry, Piper, asks Andy to describe the dead body, and he has a moment where he uses grapefruit, basically uses grapefruit. He lies. We have this moment where he essentially misuses grapefruit. He can't bear to look at the father's body, and she goes, how does he look? And without looking, he goes, good. And she goes, grapefruit, how does he look? And he goes, yeah, he looks good. And he doesn't look. And this is a moment where I think we all understand, like, yes, he is technically telling a lie, but I think it's a very empathetic, understandable lie. And then this bitch, man, oh my God, Sally Hawkins, Laura runs over and rats on him and is like, oh, you know, he actually lied to you. He didn't even look. So forces him to go back and makes him look at the father and kiss and asks him to kiss the father, and he can't. So then she does. Rough scene. Rough scene. And then we have this great moment that I really, really liked where they all get hammered together. And this is a rare moment where, in my opinion, we do actually see some humanity from Laura, from the adoptive mother. They all get hammered. They play some classic Australian bangers, particularly the one from Veronica's. And she turns out to actually be a therapist. She mentions this early in the movie, and you think she's bullshitting, but no. She actually uses some pretty like well-researched, effective like therapy tools. She does the whole like, let's sit on either side, not face each other. Let's talk about our trauma. She opens up about losing her daughter. He opens up about losing his father, talks about the abuse he suffered at his father's hands and how he replicated it at one point. It's a really good scene. And it's one of the few moments where you really connect with Laura as a character, have some empathy for her, have some understanding, and kind of almost see the potential in her being an adoptive mother. You go, okay, maybe she's just a little kooky and a little weird. But then, you know, you are consistently reminded how off kilter Ollie is and how strange some of the shit she's doing is. And I have said this out of order, so this was before the peeing scene. But then we really fucking get moving. So Ollie, the weird possessed conduit kid who's like starving, he's fiending to consume Piper or like regurgitate on Piper and consume. Is it Kathy was the original daughter that drowned? Anyways, regardless, so he's fiending. So he starts eating the cat and he eats the cat tail. And then we have this insane revelation where she starts talking to the conduit and is like, did I do this right? I'm trying to bring her back. Like, did I do it right? And the mirror shatters and you see what I took as the demon that is inside him, what the conduit looks like in its true form. Cool moment. It's all I needed. I'm so glad we didn't get any more than that. We just got this little shot where you kind of go, okay, that's what's going on. That's what's inside Ollie. Really well visually communicated. Again, I appreciate that this is a lot more stripped back than Talk to Me without feeling like less of a film. And the reason I say that is because some of the gore we get in this movie, it is sparse, but it's some of the most like visceral gore I've seen in ages. So from there, Andy is then left alone in the house. Piper and Laura go out for the day, and he breaks Ollie out of his little prison room and tries to talk to him. He tries to get the kid to write down on a note some information, answer some questions in exchange for fruit because he's clearly hungry. But the kid doesn't really seemingly want to eat fruit, or maybe he does. I think he eats the fruit, but basically he grabs a knife, eats the fruit on the end of the knife, and then starts chomping down on the knife itself. The sound design here is incredible. The directors have talked about in an interview the fact that they actually recorded this sound themselves by chewing on, like, I guess a butter knife or something, but apparently all the stock sound effects they had sounded like garbage, so they did it themselves. But the sound design here is incredible. The gore is visceral and uncomfortable. Forget Final Destinations like CGI gore. This gore is so convincing look, like you almost have to turn away. All the practical effects gore stuff in this movie is seriously top notch. And again, haven't seen gore this convincing since probably the injury details in Midsommar. That's the reason Midsommar has an R rating here in Australia, is those visceral cliff jumping gore sequences. And yeah, the gore here is on that level. It is visceral and horrific and uncomfortable, and the sound design is icky, and you're watching a child do it as well. This is like seemingly a 12-13-year-old child chomping away on like a butcher's knife. It's a lot. So from there, other moments that jumped out to me, I love the visual communication here, that Ollie can't go outside of this border. Again, I was talking about the sense of geography earlier in this review, and this is another example of that. They very quickly communicate to us that Ollie cannot go past this line, and when he does go past this line, you get this incredibly like powerhouse child performance of this kid writhing around in pain. You see his stomach convulsing, right? You get this sense that something's inside of him. It's an incredible performance, but you also see some humanity break out of Ollie when he goes over the line. Sally Hawkins, the mother, gets home to this, scolds Andy, of course. Also, there's this moment at a certain point, Andy has an apparition. Andy sees a vision that I assume is actually based in something. I don't think he was just going mad. I think it was a supernatural leak at one point, because the kid, the conduit, ate the dad's hair. So I think he then spat out like a bit of a vision. At least that's how I took it. I didn't think he was having a psychotic break. I thought it was baked into the real world supernatural occurrences, but he sees a vision of his dad in the shower when he has his first shower. And the dad tells him that if Piper goes out into the rain, she will die. Don't let her go out into the rain. And I really liked this kind of subversive twist here. It's a horrifying moment when the dad pops up, and it's also interesting because in the real world, like before the dad passed away, the dad was abusive towards Andy. It's a really interesting moment that this scary looking apparition of the dad, an abusive dad at that, is actually giving an earnest warning, something that is beneficial to Andy, and being like, hey, like your sister's going to cop it. It's a good, interesting moment. There's this really interesting moment where Andy is in the hospital and Laura goes over to the hospital, and she like at one point kind of gaslight, gatekeep, girl bosses him and says flat out to him, like, I killed your dad. Like, are you worried because I killed him? Something along those lines. And then he goes, sorry, what did you say? And she goes, oh, are you worried because he slipped? She like changes her tune. And I took this as just her trying to fuck with him. I assume we're not meant to take this as she literally did kill him. Like, I think at that point, like, you're really going to have to start sitting there and like mapping out, like, did she do this all in an attempt to get another blind child that she could then put the spirit into, and that'd be more like her daughter? Like, was this all preordained, similar to Hereditary? I took it as she was just trying to fuck with him personally and create this sense of paranoia and kind of induce like a psychotic break in him. But do you guys think she actually somehow led to the dad dying by some means? I don't know. Like, how did you guys take it? I assumed it was just a mind game, but regardless, really head fucky. There's a great scene where Piper and Laura are talking, and Laura's like, oh, would you want to like move in with me like long term? And Piper says, oh, I'm hoping that Andy gets custody and then I'll move in with him, but we'll still visit you on the weekends. And Laura is clearly like heartbroken by this, and then she goes like, oh, well, you know, like, would you at least call me mum? And then Piper's kind of like, oh, I'm not really there yet. It's a rough moment, and you feel like at that point Piper has somewhat sealed her fate. There's also a great moment where we get the revelation of what's in the freezer. Ollie hides behind it, and it's the body of Laura's initial daughter, right? And it's like decomposing and disgusting, and like Piper touches it and is told that it's just meat, like rotting meat. It's a lot. It's a lot. But then that gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss vibe that Laura has been given out throughout the movie kind of escalates in a really serious, dark moment. This is a full-on fucked up horror movie, and I really admire the lengths they went to communicate just how kind of dark this movie was going to get, how far they were going to take this like unhinged psychotic mother and her like quest to bring her back, right? But my lord, like we get a pretty visceral scene. So we have a moment where Laura puts on Andy's body spray, walks into Piper's room and punches her in the eye. And you see it all, and it's visceral. There's no music. There's no like overbearing sound design. It feels real and grounded. It's a lot, right? And then she gaslights Piper and Andy and says like, oh, well, I think Andy punched you. You clearly did this because you punched her when you were like 8 years old as well. So like clearly this is you repeating the behavior. It's so cruel of you to do this to Piper and take out your frustrations of the world on Piper. And Piper doesn't know what to believe because she like actually can't see properly, but she knows she smelled the deodorant, so it's not looking good for Andy. Also, it's a horror movie where people make smart decisions. Andy like films Ollie like eating chickens and looking demented and tries to take it to the police slash social workers, right? And then the social worker goes to the house and things unfold from there. So basically to speed run the end of the movie, all right, the mum is like fairly successful, all right? Like, so Sally Hawkins' character has done the most. Like she's pulled off summoning this conduit. She's maintained the conduit. At one point, the conduit started eating a bench and all the teeth came out, but she's managed to stop the conduit eating itself to death or anything like that. She has the conduit. The conduit has eaten the body. It's full. It's got this bloated, pregnant-looking corpse. Again, incredible practical effects, and it's all coming to a head. So the last thing she needs to do is drown Piper, but who's going to get in the way? Andy gets in the way. So she successfully kills this social worker with a car and then drowns Andy. And for a while, I was sitting there expecting Deus Ex Machina. I was expecting Andy to... No, Andy's gone. Andy did the most. Andy sent a beautiful voicemail to Piper. Andy came back to get Piper. Andy, like, is like the true hero of this movie. He did so much to try look after Piper and died with Piper in that moment, thinking that he might have actually punched her. It's a really sad, tragic ending. Like Andy gets drowned in a puddle after being hit by a car, and he was so close to pulling it off. It's really just tragic stuff. Like, and I really admire the movie for taking it this far. So at this point, you're sitting there and you're like, her plan's working. This conduit thing is walking over. It's about to regurgitate, baby bird vomit in the corpse of Piper. Like, what's going to happen? And she's drowning Piper, right? And in my opinion, what happened, and I believe this is what happened. I asked the people I watched it with, they agreed this is what happened. But the reason I say this is because I watched another YouTube video about this and they thought something else happened. So Piper calls out and says, "Mom, stop." All right. And Piper earlier in the movie refused to call Laura mom. She calls out mom here and it snaps Laura out of it. It's a real good, nice callback. And I appreciate this moment because it makes Laura's character a bit more complicated. Now, yes, we all hate Laura. She's been awful throughout this movie. She literally just killed Andy. But this single thing, like she said earlier in the movie that she would die to hear her daughter's voice again, and it almost feels like Piper screaming out "Mum" is sort of short-circuiting that. And she's having this moment of like, oh my God, what am I doing? And it snaps her out of it. Now, there is a chance that I'm wrong in this. I checked with my fiance. I asked her, like, is this what happened? She agreed it is. But this other video I watched said that it was the conduit. The daughter's voice came out of the conduit's mouth and called out mum. So it was the original daughter's voice coming out of the conduit, and that was the thing calling out mum, not Piper. So I think, look, either way it works. I'll just need to watch the movie again and double check, because if it's what I thought happened, if it was Piper calling out mum, it's a nice callback to that earlier scene. If it was the conduit calling out mum and I just missed this, and I'm, willing to acknowledge here if I did miss it. If it was the conduit calling out mum, it's a really neat moment of writing as well, because earlier in the movie she said she would kill to just hear her daughter's voice one more time, and technically she did hear that. So either one works really, really well. I really did think it. I swear I saw Piper under the water scratch out and then go, "Mom," but maybe it was the conduit calling out. Maybe I I missaw what I saw, or maybe I looked at my notes. I don't know. I may have missed something, but either one works. From there, I just think this movie nails its ending. Like, it doesn't do anything too big. The big compliment I can give this movie is it doesn't go too big. It keeps it grounded to this distressing, domestic violence laced psychological horror, like the horror of parenting and the horror of grief. And I think it does a really good job of keeping it grounded to it's basically a bottle movie with these three characters and this demented child from the marketing material running around trying to eat everything. Like, we don't get a bunch of cops show up that then get eaten by a bunch of like similar children from Ollie. We don't get the cult showing up and it's a massive standoff. We don't have a bunch of zombie kids running around. It is just this tight, focused story about these two foster kids that have lost their parents and this adoptive mum that's losing her shit, and this poor boy that we find out is actually stolen and has been like used and abused to become this conduit. It's not even like she didn't even adopt this kid. Like, she just stole this kid. This kid's missing. And not that that makes it any better. If it was her, like, just because if it was her kid, that doesn't make it good. That was weird of me to say. I acknowledge that. But yeah, like, fucking just a great story. But my big thing I love here is every single character gets a good ending. Now, good in terms of quality, not necessarily a nice fate. So Andy has a full-blown arc here and dies trying to save his sister. And I mean, I guess that kind of like, like, you can't make the argument that like he should be defined by punching his sister when he was 8, because he gives his life trying to save his sister. He does the absolute most. And also on top of that, I think thankfully Piper manages to escape. But not only that, we get interesting character resolutions for the other characters. Ollie, in a great moment, I love the RackaRackers and the way they did Talk to Me in this. They do such a good job of like writing things in that just have nice, neat payoffs. It's not super conceptual and super heady, but I love this payoff of he finds his own missing child poster. And while he's on the inside of this border maid, he sits there and knows that he's looking at something that visually looks like the vessel he's in. He knows what he's looking at, but it doesn't quite register. But it's enough to get him to like push past the border, like enough of whatever is left of this missing child that is inside this conduit pushes it to walk past the line, and then from there it becomes the missing child, and then it de-bloats. The cops show up and it says, "Oh, my name's," I forget if my name's Connor. Yes, the missing child was Connor. It goes, "Oh, I'm Connor," like, and like this poor child is going to have these demented, like fucked up, messed up teeth from chomping down on a wood board and all this missing skin and this distended stomach. Like, I hope the state offers this poor child free cosmetic work. The poor thing. Like, I was just seeing there being like that. The body keeps the score. This poor child. My God. But then you get this really interesting moment, and it speaks to what the directors were setting out to do here. So the final closing character thing I want to talk about is Laura's character is then seen cradling the decomposed body of her original daughter in the pool and seemingly either drowning to death or she's going to be arrested herself. I like the idea that she may actually just like drown there with the child. And I think that's a perfect end because there's consistently been this theme of water and this like urge to recreate her daughter's death, and she drowned Andy, and there was all those warnings about the rain. Like, to me, it feels like a fitting end if she drowns there, and I took it that way rather than getting arrested. But regardless, that's what it felt like to me. Again, I may need to rewatch this movie. There are maybe details I'm murky on that. I love the ending here. It's a haunting shot, and again, it speaks to what the directors were trying to do, because what they were trying to do was apparently they had recently, I believe it was their cousin had lost their child. So their cousin had lost a very young child, and they saw the way grief took over them and how visceral of an experience grief is. And they tried to explore that in this movie. And initially you're seeing there being like, oh, weird way to pay tribute to, this person close to you that's lost a child by giving this unhinged, crazy character, but there's these moments throughout the movie that do imply some empathy, some humanity. I think earlier in the movie, when she is opening up with Andy, you do feel for her a bit. And I found, strangely enough, even though I've watched her do all these awful things throughout the movie, there is this through line of she is someone who has been completely broken and traumatized by grief. I do believe that she probably was a good psychologist and a good person before losing her daughter. I think she just cracked and snapped. And I think the fact that she let Piper go at the end, and this empathetic lens they give with her final moments of her lying there in the water with her decomposed initial daughter's body, is a moment I applaud and I think demands a lot of maturity and introspection from the audience. And I really admire the fact that they've shown this woman be absolutely despicable and is still trying to walk the tightrope of, does she warrant any empathy or understanding? Because I thought by the end of the movie, despite all the awful shit she did, I'm not saying she's like a misunderstood hero, but I had a lot of empathy for her. I felt terrible for her at the end of the movie. And that was the thing. Like, the friend I saw it with who loved Talk to Me was like, that was a fantastic movie that I can't watch again anytime soon because it was so grim. This is not a villain that you are wanting to see hit by a car or exploded. Like, maybe at certain points during the movie you are hoping that, but by the end of the movie, you're not really seeing that being like, damn it, I wanted to see her explode or get shot or get her come up. And it's something a lot sadder, a lot more tragic, a lot deeper, a lot darker. And I think that is when I really understood the sort of tribute or the sort of level of understanding they were trying to give. And I think getting someone like Sally Hawkins, who is known as this incredibly warm screen presence from the Paddington movies, I think was such a stroke of genius. Apparently she was at the top of their casting list and they were so lucky to have got her. It's a casting list they formulated with A24, the two directors. But I just think they nailed this. And truthfully, the thing that was holding back Talk to Me slightly, I still give Talk to Me like an 8 out of 10, was I didn't have a lot of existential dread or like things that lingered in the back of my brain after that movie. I thought it was a really good, fun, visceral horror movie. And in terms of like sleepover horror movie, I think it's as good as it gets. But for me, the reasons I think about Midsommar, for example, are, did the boyfriend deserve everything that he went through? Did these is there actually a sense of happiness at the end of that movie, or is it just purely tragic? I think rewatching that movie, there's so much to pull from it. And with Hereditary, I think there's so much to pull from that movie about generational trauma, family mental illness, and also just like how much of that movie was preordained. Like, was he ever getting home from that party successfully, or were things always going to go wrong? Like, did this cult have their hand in literally every aspect of these people's lives? Was there any sense of free will? And the reason I bring this up is that was the one thing lacking with Talk to Me. I just felt like it was a bit more of a simple film, and that's fine. I'm not saying it's a weakness of the movie, but for me, that's why I don't revisit Talk to Me too much. But Bring Her Back, I think, is just so much more demanding psychologically, and I think there is this really good sense of rhythm and poetry in these characters' fates and the way they all kind of like lean into their archetypes that are set up at the start of the movie. There is a sense of existential dread in this movie. And the big thing I love too is I've seen the director talk about the fact that they purely wanted to hint at the way the cult worked, how she got around this, like her connections to the cult and what the cult actually was. And I think that was genius. I think the home videos we got in this movie are tight and well done and properly disturbing and horrifying visuals of people eating people. And you get enough to understand it. And I think the lack of explanation makes it scarier. But while I can't explain the full lore of the actual cult itself, I don't think we're meant to be able to. I would like to speculate on how I think Sally Hawkins's therapist, like when she was a therapist, how she came across this. So in my opinion, I think she was probably treating people that were mentally ill, aka people that had actually communicated with this cult, pulled off stuff from the cult. I assume she was working with maybe ex-victims, right? Ex-child victims like Ollie/Connor of this cult, and then she bottled that for later, and then she, initially was probably like, oh, these crazy heads. Then she lost her daughter and was like, I'd do anything to have my daughter back, and then went, wait, what about those weird people that were saying they could bring people back to life? What if there is something in that? That's my take. It's not perfect. I was just thinking about today at work, but yeah, in my opinion, maybe she was treating people that had been through this cult or were parts of this cult and initially was like, fuck that, that's crazy. And then, when she lost her own child, she was like, actually, maybe there's something to this. I love this movie. I think this movie is great. I am getting ahead of it. I am saying this is a new horror classic. I finished that. I was like, I have no notes. And, I don't like throwing around perfect scores, 10 out of 10s lightly. But for what this movie was going for, I don't think it ever set a foot wrong. And I've seen some critiques on Letterboxd saying that, yeah, the scenes didn't sit long enough. I completely disagree. I've seen people saying that they wanted more from the lore or the mythos. I think given what this movie was going for, absolutely not. It reminds me of The Substance, where The Substance is clearly about certain themes, certain ideas. It demands clinical efficiency in some parts. You're not meant to be seen there being like, how does The Substance work? Who funds it? What to what end? No, like the story that's trying to be told there, I think it completely nails it. I think this movie is the same. Watch this movie. If for some reason you've watched this full review, it's 90 minutes. Close your eyes if the scenes are too long. There is like child abuse and like horrific stuff, but it's such a good movie. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Please like, comment, subscribe. Have a lovely day. If you've enjoyed me talk about this movie, if you want to hear me talk about every single show and movie I watch every 2 weeks, I do a podcast for members only and Patreon members. Feel free to sign up to either of those in the links below. Thank you so much for watching and have a lovely day. Thank you.